And you'd have American bootleggers coming over in cars which they called Whiskey Sixes, which were six-cylinder Buicks, which came over and were filled up with cases of liquor and drove back across the completely empty plain.
They shipped it in by truck, they shipped it in by boat. You could load a railroad car, start it down toward the United States. Just after it crossed the border into the United States, it suddenly developed a brake problem. And they had to halt the train, and immediately the purchasers of the liquor on the American side would open the boxcar and unload the liquor.
And so Sam Bronfman found himself doing business with people including Al Capone. The American Mafia really got its start as distributors of illicit alcohol.
The Bronfmans were exporting so much whiskey to the United States, they decided to produce it too. Harry invested his profits in a warehouse for storing and blending liquor. He furnished it with redwood vats for mixing and outfitted it with bottling and labeling machines. Although modest in scope, the operation could produce 1,000 bottles an hour.
It was pretty awful stuff, but they still called anything Scotch. Harry and Sam claimed to be brilliant distillers with generations of knowledge. In fact, they knew nothing, and it was pretty vile stuff, actually.
To improve the quality of their stock, Sam became the chief taster and blender. Over time, his attention to detail and passion for excellence made his products stand out.
He had what they call a wonderfully sophisticated palate. That is, he could taste whiskeys that were going to be blended into new whiskeys. He quickly realized that if you could standardize the brewing and the blending process so that you'd have a uniform type of whiskey, this would be a great advantage.
By this time, the Bronfman's whiskey was legal to drink in Canada, and their business was a welcome one there. It was paying hefty taxes.
They were protected because liquor was such a very important source of revenue for the federal government.
If United States laws were being broken, the Bronfmans figured that wasn't their problem.
It was illegal in the United States to import alcoholic beverages from Canada, but Sam's responsibility ended at the border. And as long as he sold to what he thought was a legitimate buyer in the United States, he considered that he had not broken any laws.
Legal or not, it was dangerous.
One of Sam's brothers-in-law, Paul Matoff, who was in charge of one of the boozerians on the frontier, on the 49th frontier, was shot one night.
An unknown assailant killed Madoff and made off with his diamond ring and stick pin. The family was shaken, but not stirred from their business aims.
It didn't have much effect on Sam, but it had a colossal psychological problem for Harry, who was a much more normal human being, and it shattered him and made him much less serious a threat to Sam and Sam's supremacy.
By 1922, the brothers, all just in their early 30s, were millionaires. Sam finally decided to take a wife. He married Sadie Rosner, daughter of another wealthy immigrant Jewish family.
This was a woman of incredible strength, kept a family together, great generosity, extremely intelligent, and yet had a huge heart.
Although the couple would remain devoted to each other for life, marriage left the workaholic Sam otherwise unchanged.
Sam's whiskeys were better quality than most of his competitors, and so he was able to charge a premium price.
In 1927, Sam scored a coup when the Bronfmans became partners with the distinguished Scottish firm Distillers Company Limited, makers of Johnnie Walker.
The Distillers Company were the gods, the dominant factor in Scotch. They had Haig, Johnnie Walker, Buchanan, and so on.
Sam's new partnership enabled the Bronfmans to purchase a small Canadian company called Seagram, makers of VO. The company soon became a major distiller.
It was really Seagram and Sam Bronfman who created the idea of an upscale national liquor brand.
The partnership with Distillers Company and the ownership of Seagram were the foundation for Sam's future and the cornerstone of an international business empire.
Buying Seagram's gave Sam Bronfman a number of advantages. He acquired several popular and prominent brand names that he could further exploit, and it gave him a leg up on his competitors.
To complement his distinguished Scottish distillery, Sam wanted a suitable new office. The headquarters he built on Peel Street in Montreal in the 20s were designed to reflect his newfound admiration for all things Scottish.
It's a replica of a Scottish castle, and it's meant to signify his respect for Scottish tradition in the liquor business.
By the end of 1933, when Prohibition was repealed in the United States, Seagram was poised for explosive growth. But all the family's wealth could not help Sam shake the taint of bootlegging, which remained a social stigma.
He was an outsider in every sense. A Jewish bootlegger, I mean, you couldn't be any farther out. So he had this great desire, not only for acceptance, but respect.
Respect would remain an elusive prize, however. Sam would have to content himself with money and power, and he and his heirs would have plenty of both. Throughout Prohibition, the Bronfman family made a fortune by legally making and selling liquor in Canada, liquor that was then bootlegged into the United States. But in 1933, Prohibition was repealed in the U.S. As bars and liquor stores went back into business, the Bronfmans were there to cash in.
Once Prohibition is over, Bronfman is in a position to move very aggressively into the now legitimate whiskey business in the United States.
Sam Bronfman combined his skill at blending quality alcohol with an impeccable talent for marketing. In 1934, he staged the launch of two new Seagram whiskeys, 5 Crown and 7 Crown, in the ballroom of New York's Waldorf Astoria. In the midst of the Depression, the elegance of the exclusive Waldorf gilded Seagram's whiskey with a shimmer of luxury.
Sam's formula, if I could put it this way, was to sell whiskey as a product for the good life. Through advertising, there would be a kind of a vicarious association with, let us say, the life of English clubs. Leather couches, well-dressed gentlemen in a moment of ease and relaxation.
To promote his brands, Bronfman outspent his competitors. Seagram committed $100,000 a month for advertising, a staggering sum in the Great Depression.
His advertising was brilliant, not just for 7 Crown and 5 Crown, but there was one called Lord Calvert. They had a famous advertising campaign there for Man of Distinction. You were a man of distinction.
Ever the opportunist, Sam's genius for promotion was on fine display when England's monarchy paid a visit.
In 1939, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, better known as Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, visited Canada, and it was a crowning, brilliant idea on the part of Mr. Sam to have a special whiskey, much older, which he called naturally Crown Royal. He managed to get a few cases onto the Royal train. And secondly, he arranged for it to be sold in purple velvet, rather regal bags.
Crown Royal became an overnight success and an overnight sensation, and quickly became the best seller in the Seagram's lineup.
Only 3 years after the repeal of Prohibition in the U.S., Seagram's profits surpassed $70 million. The Bronfmans had become the equivalent of billionaires in today's money. But the money wasn't enough for Sam. Over the years, he had systematically sidelined his brothers in running the company. Now, he made the financial division unequal as well. He grabbed 40% of the company's stock for himself. As he became the largest share owner and sole boss of Seagram, Mr. Sam, as he became known, indulged his temperament to the full.
This was a man with the most extraordinarily powerful personality. Most famously, it was expressed in great explosions of anger.
He was most abusive to his brothers, particularly to Alan, who was Seagram's corporate counsel.
Alan suffered because he stayed with Sam, whereas the other two much more independent. Alan went into the army, and Sam was dead jealous when he appeared in the office in uniform. I said, "Oh Christ, if it were more like you, Hitler would win," and similar gentle remarks.
Employees also had to be able to stand up to Sam, and if they could, they had a job for life.
He was a generous employer. He was also impossible. He used to scream with rage a lot of the time.
He would throw things, he would smash the glass top of his desk and so forth. And then, of course, revert to normal immediately afterwards and expect life to go on as before.
Despite his ferocious temper, Sam had a strong sense of social responsibility. He and his family had suffered from anti-Semitism, the displacement of the Jews preceding World War II, and the rising world tide of anti-Semitism galvanized him into action. In 1938, Sam joined the Canadian Jewish Congress and was quickly elected president.
The Jews of Europe were looking desperately for a place to go that would save them. And Canada was closing its doors